Good afternoon. Hello. Welcome, friends. It is Giving Tuesday, and we are back with our wonderful Wave Warrior team member, AC Hart. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about more of our mission and what the Wave Warriors is here to do. But we're also going to talk about the incredible artwork that AC has created, and we're going to get a sneak peek into the process. And we're going to actually get to see some of her art because she's joining us live from her studio. And you're going to get an even bigger treat towards the end of this session. But we're going to not tell you more about that until we get there. So I just want to welcome you, AC. So glad you're here. Hello.
Thank you. I feel welcome. And for everybody who's tuning in, welcome to my studio. This is how it normally looks. It's a combination of super organized because I'm a Virgo and totally messy because I don't know what my excuse is for that. But
You're an artist.
Because I'm an artist. Exactly. Yeah. So I work on this table, and this table is a 9-foot long piece of ironwood. Wow. That was the door in a Tibetan monastery at one point. And it came to me kind of magically by accident on the Buddha's birthday. It's kind of funny. So, wow. So this is what I work on. This is where I have drawn every single one of the Wave Warrior whales is on this giant 9-foot long piece of ironwood.
So I think it'd be really fun, since it's Giving Tuesday, to talk a little bit about the origin of your background. First of all, I want to talk about Flow Song, and then how you got from writing this beautiful children's book to reaching out to Riley Starks, who is a fisherman on Lummi Island, to painting portraits of all of the southern resident orcas. So
yeah, it seems a little disconnected, doesn't it? But in my mind, it makes perfect sense.
Right, because it's such a beautiful story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spotlight you while you storytell, and I'm going to go share this video far and wide. And I encourage everybody who's watching this, buckle in, settle in, get yourself cozy, because it's such a beautiful story, and it gives so much meaning to the work that we're doing. So over to you, AC.
Thank you. Well, I am an artist, but I'm also a storyteller, and I think I'm a storyteller first and foremost. So that when I create a piece of art, it's also a way of telling a story. It's just a visual means of telling a story rather than a verbal means of telling a story. And I am the creator of Flow Song, which is a children's story, a book series, but it's edutainment. It's actually meant to entertain children so that they're having fun, and as they start enjoying themselves, we're able to teach some very key principles that help children come back to their bodies, to their communities, and use their voices in a powerful way. And so this is really my passion in life, is the human voice, and specifically giving children back their voices. And I think that we live in a time, so in 2019 BC, that's before COVID, everybody, people were behind screens a lot, just like we are right now, but we weren't really thinking about it. And then here we are in 2023 AD, which is after distancing. And I think now people are starting to think about it. We're going, wait, how is this changing my body? How is this changing my brain? What's this doing to my relationships? What's this doing to my children? And so people are now really thinking about the impact that all of this screen time has on our delicate human instruments. And so the Flow Song series is really designed to help children understand how their voice works, how the sound of our voices move through the tissue and organ systems of our bodies, and the different mental, emotional experiences that are connected with these sounds that we naturally make. So I think of myself as a land orca, first and foremost. I come by it honestly. I'm obsessed with bioacoustics, with sound waves, and with how sound waves interact with the physical body. And so it made sense when Riley approached me and asked me to do portraits of my brothers and sisters in the sea. It made perfect sense to me. And how do I know Riley Starks? So I was living in Santa Fe at the time, and I wrote this story. I don't have a copy of it right now, but Welcome to Flow Song. I wrote the book Welcome to Flow Song, and it's set in on an invisible island in the Sound. And so when I created it, I'm like, where is there a sound? Where in the world is there a sound? Sound. And I'm like, oh, Puget Sound. So I started researching the Puget Sound area, Washington State. And I decided that's where I was going to base my book series because I wanted my main character to be diving into the sound every day. As I was researching this area, I came across an article about the Willows Inn, which was a fine dining restaurant on Lummi Island for many years. And it was started by this man, Riley Starks, a man of great vision, who wanted to create a hyper local fine dining restaurant. And so as I started reading about Riley Starks, I got curious about, well, this is an interesting creative person who makes things happen. I wonder what else he's doing. And I started looking him up. You know, we can Google anybody nowadays. Um, and I looked him up, and I found out about this thing called Lummi Island Wild. And Lummi Island Wild was a seafood company. And interestingly enough, in the middle of the high mountain desert, Santa Fe, New Mexico, I used to walk down to the La Montanita Co-op. And I would walk down the aisle and see little cans of tuna and salmon that said Lummi Island Wild on them. And the packaging was really sexy. It was like blue and matte, and the fonts were beautiful. Excuse me. So I saw this packaging, and I'm like, whoever's behind this packaging is really, really smart. They know what they're doing. And who was behind that packaging just happened to be Riley Starks. So when I found out about Lummi Island Wild, whose products I saw on the shelves in my local co-op, and I saw this guy's face, this bearded, like, old man with a white beard and hair, laughing on a boat. I was like, I have to know this person. So the first thing I did was I sent him a lumpy package. And here's a tip for all of you who are trying to make something happen in the world. People can't resist a lumpy package. If you send them an envelope that's flat, they can easily pass it over. It gets lost in the stack, or they throw it away. But if it has a lump of some kind in it, there's this irresistible human curiosity that makes us go, what's in this one? So I sent him a lumpy package. I sent him a handwritten letter, because my books are all written by hand. I believe that fonts have no soul, and I want children's creativity, the parts of their brain responsible for creativity, to be fully awakened when they look at these stories and these images that I create, including the Wave Warriors images. And so I sent him this beautiful handwritten letter, which I seal with a wax seal that has the Fibonacci spiral. Like, my little stamp has the Fibonacci spiral, and then I put a Flow Song book in there. And then I included a little bag of New Mexico dried red chili, not knowing at the time, of course, that Riley doesn't eat spicy food. I never cook spicy food for him, now that I know him. But at the time, I didn't know. So I sent this little package of spicy red chili and a book and a beautiful handwritten letter. And this lumpy package went out into the world, and I sent it to Lummi Island Wild, to his office. And then I went to my husband and I said, honey, I need a plane ticket. I'm going to Washington to meet this guy, Riley Starks. And my husband, knowing me, he's like, does he know you're coming? And I was like, no. And my husband's response to that was, here's my credit card. So I got a plane ticket, and I rented a car, and I started heading north. I had connected with a woman who lived on Lummi Island who was going to let me stay there. So I had that part handled. And as I was driving, and I had no clue how I was going to find this person. I just knew he lived on Lummi Island and he worked with this seafood company, Lummi Island Wild. So I'm driving north in this rented car, listening to an audiobook by Napoleon Hill. And my phone rings. And it's my husband, and he says, "Honey, guess who just showed up at my house?" And I said, "Who could it be? I just don't know." And he said, "Jose Lobo." This is a real person, everybody. Jose Lobo is here. Now, Jose Lobo is this guy my husband grew up with going to Santa Fe Prep, which is like the fancy school in Santa Fe. And after he graduated, he went out into the world and he started working at a resort where all of these celebrities would come. And so his like phone is full of the phone numbers and addresses of like various celebrities and other high profile people. And that's just who he is in the world. When his father, bless his soul, was dying of cancer, Jose Lobo called Val Kilmer and was like, "Hey, Val, my husband, or not my husband, sorry, my father's dying wish is to go fly fishing in New Mexico. Do you mind if we get a helicopter and fly out to your property?" And Val's like, "Sure, bring him here to go fishing." So this is the kind of person that had just, an old childhood friend of my husband's just showed up at our house while I'm off in Washington, determined to meet this guy, Riley Starks. So my husband, he calls and he's like, "Guess who's here? Jose Lobo." And Jose Lobo says, if you go to Orcas Island and find Farmer Johnny and bring him a bottle of Old Crow, he'll give you anything you want. So I said, "It looks like I'm going to Orcas Island." I changed course and I went up through Anacortes and I got on that ferry and I went all the way into the San Juans, which Flo's song, takes place on an invisible island in the San Juan archipelago. So I was like, I'll just go to where Flo lives. So I'm on this ferry and I'm headed towards Orcas Island. And when I get off, I go to the liquor store and I get the biggest bottle of Old Crow I can find. And it's a small island, so I start asking people, "Do you know Farmer Johnny?" And it was like only like 2-3 people I had to ask before somebody was like, "Oh yeah, he lives down this street, and if you go this way and then take a right and then take that first left and you go down about half a mile, you're going to see his farm. It's called blah blah, and it's like right over there." I was like, "Thanks." So I get in my car and I drive over to Farmer Johnny's house, and there's Farmer Johnny. And I walk in and I put this bottle of Old Crow down on the table in front of him. And he goes, "Oh, somebody knows me." And I said, "Well, yeah, that would be Jose Lobo." And he told me, if I bring you this bottle of Old Crow, that you would give me anything I want. And Farmer Johnny says, "What do you want?" I said, "I want the personal phone number of this guy on Lummi Island, Riley Starks. I don't want his work number. I don't want his email. I want his cell phone number. And I want it today." So Farmer Johnny's like, "I'll see what I can do." And he brings me this plate of fresh greens from his farm with a homemade garlic vinaigrette dressing, and a thick slice of sourdough bread that he had baked that morning with probably if the bread was that thick, the butter was like that thick. It was half as thick as the bread itself. So basically, he gave me some butter with a little bread underneath and fed me lunch, all homemade, which was absolutely delicious. And then I sang him a song about a crow, you know, because of anyway. And then I left. And I'm on the ferry. I'm headed back towards the mainland, and my phone rings, and it's Farmer Johnny, and he says, "Got a pen?" So I call Riley Starks, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm AC Hart, and I flew here from Santa Fe just because I wanted to meet you, and I'm headed to Lummi Island right now, and I want to come to your house and make you dinner." And he was like, "Oh, great. Come on over. We'll have salmon." That's how I know Riley. So there was a bunch of people from Patagonia out who were filming the reef net fishing process for the Patagonia Provisions Division article and an informational video that they wanted to create. So I ended up cooking for all of these idealistic young Patagonia people and Riley. I made salmon with tarragon butter and chopped strawberries on a bed of wild rice pilaf with roasted asparagus on the side. It was really good. I cook fluently in multiple languages, as well as doing a myriad of other artistic and creative endeavors. And then after all the Patagonia people left, after everything was said and done, I was sitting down at the table in the farmhouse at Nettles Farm, which is where Riley lives, which has become my home away from home. I've had a life-changing, pivotal conversation at that table in the farmhouse. Rachel Wilkins, who is hosting our live stream today, I have sat at that very table with her and, changed the world in a few short conversations. It'll take a while to see the effects, but it was at that table that it happened. And it was that night that it happened where I was sitting there with Riley and he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm leaving Lummi Island Wild. I started this company and I've been the marketing director for a long time, but they want me out and I have no clue what I'm going to do next." And I said, "Riley, I just flew here all the way from Santa Fe for the sole purpose of meeting you. Because when I read about you online, I thought there is a very plucky and indomitable person who makes things happen. This person has his fingers on the pulse of life itself, and he's going for it. And I absolutely believe with all of my heart in how resourceful and brilliant you are. So you're going to come up with something." And we didn't know at that time that we were sitting basically at the seed of what would become the Salish Center for Sustainable Fishing Methods. We just knew that the old reality was falling apart and that something new was coming into being, and that for some reason I was there and he was there at the same time. Like I followed my intuition all the way from New Mexico to Washington just to sit at that table and listen to this amazing man that I had flown all the way out just to meet saying, "My life's crumbling and I don't know what's going to replace this thing I've built." It was only, a couple months later that he's like, "Oh, I know this guy, Larry Mellum. He's the owner of Pike Place Chowder, which is super, super successful clam chowder business down at Pike Place Market in Seattle. And I'm going to go talk to him about starting a nonprofit to see if we can promote reef net fishing and ultimately save the Salish Sea and the endangered southern resident orcas that live there." And I was like, I need to come up with something. I still lived in New Mexico, and then the pandemic hit the fan. If anybody remembers, any of you remember that? That little thing that happened called the pandemic that basically was, like a grenade that, I'm sure you remember. Anyway, if you don't, there's this thing that happened. It was COVID. And during COVID, we all had solutions to the difficulties we were experiencing. Some of us, went on like a mega self improvement program. Some of us went on a mega, Cheeto diet. And my husband and I, our solution was to move 3 times. Uh, you know, um, and end up in Washington State, which for me was great because that's where my books are set. And I was actually having a very difficult time drawing the pictures for the books from the high mountain desert of northern New Mexico. So we ended up in Washington State, and one of the first people I reached out to once I had landed was Riley, and I said, I live up here now, and I'd like to see you again. I'd love to come up to Lummi and reconnect. And he said, yeah, sure, that'll happen. We'll do that. And then I moved again, from where I had, and then that was the last time I moved. So now I'm here. And I got this text one morning, and it said, I've had this fantastic idea. I want to do portraits of the endangered southern resident orcas and use these portraits as a way of bringing awareness to their plight and educating people about what it's going to take to save them. Would you be interested in doing the artwork for that? And so I was in the middle of working on Flow Song, and I had the first 2 storyboards, and I was halfway through storyboard 3 for this 10-book story I've written that's like all one long rhyming epic. I'd gotten, part of the way through. And I said, yeah. And so I ended up putting my entire children's book series and the things that I was working on before completely I shelved them. I put them on hiatus. And for the last probably a year and a half, I'm just starting to get, my flex on again where Flow Song's concerned, because I've done the portraits. But for a year and a half, I basically focused on helping build the Wave Warriors project and doing the artwork for the Wave Warriors project, and also writing stories that go with each of the images. And Riley's pretty funny because he and Larry were brainstorming, like, all we need now is to find an artist. And he said he'd been just kind of buzzing around Nettles Farm, feeding the chickens and, picking blackberries and cleaning the grill, going artist. Who do I know? Artist. And he said he was in bed, and all of a sudden he sat bolt upright in the middle of his bed in the middle of the night and went, oh, AC Hart. The next day he texted me. So that's a long, I hope, I like to think I'm a good storyteller, so I hope you enjoyed that long story, but that's pretty much how I ended up drawing portraits of whales for the Salish Center for Sustainable Fishing Methods, the Wave Warriors project.
You are such a good storyteller. It's
Oh,
ridiculous.
good. I hope so. I'm counting on it.
It's amazing. And I'm trying right now to find a way to share. Okay, I think I got it. So, okay.
Aw.
So what we're looking at right now is one of 70 plus Southern resident orca portraits that you did. And this one is a really special one. And she's probably the most famous Southern resident orca, sadly, for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. So I would love if you could talk about the process behind this work, a little bit about where this work ended up, which was very fun last year, and then what's coming.
Well, I'm really sad about this. When I look at this image, it makes me sad. And the reason it makes me sad is because when I created it, I created it because the news had come out that Tokite was coming home. And so if you don't But she is a southern resident orca, and she and many other young orcas were captured in Penn Cove uh, about 50 years ago, and they were taken out of the water, away from their families, away from their parents, and sold into the circus, basically. And Toki was one of them. And the person who was doing the selecting for the Miami Seaquarium, as he went over these baby orcas, that were all pulled out of the sea with nets, he came upon Tokite, and he said, "There's really something special about this one. She has a destiny, and I can feel it." And he was there to purchase her for the circus, but he could still feel, that there was just something about her that was different. And so Tokite lived in Miami Seaquarium for over 50 years in a tiny little concrete pool. And she was trained to do tricks and perform, and she did that for many, many years until the southern residents became classified as endangered, at which point it became illegal for any images or public appearances of her to be used for the purpose of profit. And so she basically just languished in this concrete pool by herself, very lonely. And now she didn't even get to perform and like see the smiles of the children and the people in the audience. So very lonely fate for Tokite. And the piece that I created, I had this vision when I was thinking about it of like, well, I want to show, because there were rumors at the time that maybe FedEx was going to fund the flight part of it, that they would be willing to put her on a freight plane and fly her from Miami back to the Salish Sea, up here in the Pacific Northwest. And so in my mind, I thought, well, I'd like to have this plane carrying her, but I'd like the plane to be like a big eagle or something. And I want to have it be like a Coast Salish eagle. And so I have a good relationship with a couple of the Lummi elders, the Lactamesh people. And I have permission to use their sacred imagery in my work for the purpose of bringing balance, healing, and harmony back to the Salish Sea and to all of us. So what a privilege, that they allow me to reproduce their sacred imagery. But I had this vision of a giant eagle carrying Tokite, but it was also an airplane. And so I looked up online giant eagles carrying, or giant eagles and orcas, Coast Salish legends, to see if there were any. And lo and behold, there was, one of the main legends in this region is the legend of the Thunderbird and the orca. So in this legend, there was a giant evil orca that had stationed itself at the mouth of a river and was gobbling up all the fish. And because it was doing this, the people started going hungry. And so they prayed and prayed to Creator, who sent their protector, Thunderbird. And Thunderbird swooped down and picked up this evil orca. And this great battle ensued in the sky between the evil orca, the giant evil orca, and the Thunderbird. And the Thunderbird dropped the orca at the mouth of a stream where it died. And when it rotted, the rotting orca corpse poisoned the water so that everybody downstream from this dead orca got sick. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. So when I discovered this legend, I was like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I cannot possibly create this, without being super, super offensive and doing like cultural appropriation. And it's just not a cheerful story. I was like, this is not good. So I called one of the Lactamesh elders, who I have the privilege of having earned his trust and his support and friendship. And I told him what I had discovered. And he said, if you had the vision, then do the piece. Don't mess with the vision. Trust the creator if he gave you that vision, and just do the piece. I was like, okay, here goes nothing. So I started creating my FedEx Thunderbird. And the Thunderbird in the Coast Salish legends, they have these dragons under their armpits that spit fire. And so I was thinking like the engines under the wings, spitting fire. And I did it in like the FedEx colors, even though later I had to take that off, the FedEx logo off, because it was like, well, it's not certain yet if they're going to do it or not. So don't put the thing in. I was like, okay, fine. But I created this giant Thunderbird airplane thing with fire spitting armpits carrying a whale. And as I did, I came to realize that this legend had come to pass. That the giant evil orca at the mouth of the river was commercial fishing methods that have absolutely no conscience and do not take into account the natural balance that they're disturbing and the needs of other beings that suffer as a result of them wastefully pulling too much fish and being careless with the bycatch. And that the Thunderbird was airplanes that came and picked up these orcas, these baby orcas, and took them to the mouth of revenue streams, where all but one had died. Toki was the only one still living. That all of them had died, and these revenue streams poisoned the souls of everybody downstream from them who were making money off of the suffering, the horrible suffering of these creatures. And so recognizing that this had already come to pass, the piece that I created was a type of prayer, me saying with great hope, please, there's no way we as human beings can make what happened right. But this is at least a step in the right direction if we can get this whale and return her to the Salish Sea, to her family, to her mother ocean sun, who is the oldest living southern resident orca who's still alive. And Toki's story mimics the story of Coast Salish people whose own children were taken away from them and, forced to dress a certain way and cut their hair, and they weren't allowed to speak their languages, and they were given different names. Like Toki's stage name, her stripper name, I like to call it Lolita. That it in some ways mimics the suffering of the Coast Salish people and what they've had to endure over the years. And they have a very close relationship with these orcas. They consider them family members. So for them, when these children were taken out of the sea, it was just as bad as when their own children were taken and put into these boarding schools. And so, Toki didn't make it home. She had a lot of help, a wealthy philanthropist, a lot of veterinarians and people who loved her and who were rooting for her. But in the end, we found out the day before our big Wave Warrior launch, we'd been working at it, and we had it all set up for the Lummi Island Reef Net Festivals when we were going to, like, hey, we're here, Wave Warriors, woo! And we found out the day before that Tokate had died in captivity. And so I think about Tokate being caught in the net, and I think about her being pulled out of the water and put into confinement and then dying, singing her song to nothing and nobody in this little concrete pool. And I think about children today, how a lot of them are caught in the net. The internet, they're, rather than using the internet, they're being used by it. And, that they're pulled out of the water, which is the creative flow as they start to rely on technology to create things for them. They can just push a button and AI will paint a picture, and then they'll be like, look, I'm an artist or whatever. And then, they're in these soundproof bomb shelters made out of tension, which to me is like the little concrete pool that Toki lived in, because they're starting to experience profound anxiety and fear just trying to talk to each other, because their brains are being wired for this and not for this. Um, and I think, it's too late for Toki, but it's not too late for the rest of us, and it's certainly not too late for the children. That our fate doesn't have to be like hers. So when I drew this particular piece that you just saw, it was really a prayer, and it was from a place of great hope because I genuinely believed that Toki was coming home, and I was very fortunate that it was featured at a big Web3 conference, and my art was chosen to be on this digital art van that was driving around Times Square. So lots and lots of people saw this piece. And this is a watercolor foreground that has been superimposed on a photograph I took of Deception Pass, which is a beautiful place up near Anacortes, Washington. And I wrote a little handmade, like hand calligraphy, you know, text there that says, "Mom, I'm coming home." And that's what the piece consists of. And the only change that one of my friends who is a Lummi elder and who worked really hard to save Tokate and bring her home, Ellie Kinley, when I showed her this, the legs on the Thunderbird were purple. I mean, sorry, they were red. And she said, "It looks like Toki's bleeding. Can you change the color?" And I said, "Yeah." So I changed them to purple. Yeah, there she is. She's driving around Times Square. Would you look at that? You're stuck in traffic, and you can look at Toki flying over the Salish Sea as she sheds tears of joy, reaching out towards her people.
Isn't that something else?
It was pretty cool. I was excited for that opportunity. I was really grateful that they chose to gift me that opportunity to have my artwork on the truck next to some pretty high name artists.
Yep.
Little old me.
So obviously, this piece didn't really get to manifest the vision that you had created. So you've decided to do something
No.
a little different to honor Toki. And if you're willing to talk about it, and then perhaps you can share a story with us, maybe?
I don't know. That's a pretty big ask. It would be the first time I've read one of these stories. It would be the first time people have heard me read one of these stories. So that'd be kind of a big deal, I guess.
I think it would. Well, why don't you, before you do that, yes, exactly, show your work and let's talk about these beautiful portraits.
Sorry, the
Oh,
sun's now shining in. My studio has like these garage doors that
oh,
have, yeah, I
Toki.
can open the door and look out on the gardens, but right now it's just making a bunch of light that's making it complicated for me to show you all this.
That is
So,
beautiful.
yeah, it's a picture of a thunderbird carrying Tokate, and I wanted to redo it and have it be an actual thunderbird and not some, please forgive me, FedEx, some cheesy FedEx airplane thunderbird carrying her, because that is not how it happened.
Hmm.
That she wasn't carried home by an airplane, that she was carried home by an extension of the creator, which in this case was the Thunderbird. And so this is the original watercolor piece that goes with it. And what I do is I photograph it and then I remove the backgrounds and I digitally superimpose this piece on a different background of my choosing. And in this particular case, it's a digital artwork I created of a nebula in space. And so the final piece, and you'll see like in the final piece that the Thunderbird's actually surrounded, it's outlined in um, blue light and has like blue lightning coming off of it as the Thunderbird carries Toki home through the cosmos, through the heavens.
I've got a sneak peek at the finished piece and it's just beautiful. And I think Judging by the reaction that your recent work has received online, I think people are going to just be so moved and so excited about it. And you know, the reason or the motivation behind this entire initiative is to be able to raise funds to do the work that is necessary to save these southern resident orcas. That is why the Wave Warriors exists. And so, how do you help? Like, how do people who are watching this video, how can you help? There's two ways. You can actually adopt an orca, symbolically, of course. You don't get to go to the Salish Sea and, bring it home with you. Just have to clarify that. So you can adopt an orca either for your business for $100 a month, and that will include the ability to provide us with your logos, and we will put your logo, we'll splash your logo on our business page, we'll send it out in our social media blasts. Or if you're an individual or a family, a parent, you have a friend who you want to gift this to, you can adopt an orca yourself for $20 a month. And that $20 is going to go a long way towards essential and vital research, to habitat restoration. We're actually working with an amazing organization called Oceans Initiative. And also, you get to experience the beautiful artwork that AC has created. And this is breaking news, a story about Tokate as well. So, AC, if you feel inspired, no pressure. I think it would be lovely to share a little about the story.
Thank you. I've been writing stories for many of the orcas, but this one felt really personal to me. So I would love to share it. Um, yeah, and this will be the first time that I've read one of these stories out loud. So they're called orca songs, and this one's called Tokate Goes Home. Tokate was 2 years old the first time she saw a giant boat at the river's mouth greedily gobbling up all of the fish. At first, she thought it was some sort of monstrous whale, but she couldn't figure out why a whale would do something so foolish as to eat all the fish and leave nothing for anyone else. Her mother, Ocean's son, explained to her that these were boats made by men, and that these boats fished for the same salmon that the southern resident orcas needed to feed their families. Toki's relatives, the coast Salish people, had a legend about a giant evil whale at the mouth of the river that ate up all the fish. Their protector, the Thunderbird, swooped down and picked up the whale, and a great battle ensued. The Thunderbird dropped the whale far away at the mouth of the stream where it died. The coast Salish people celebrated because the salmon returned to their rivers, but everyone downstream from the dead whale who drank from that water got sick. Toki couldn't help but to think these big boats were part of the legend somehow. "You have a special destiny," her mother told her. "I saw it in a dream. Most orcas can't talk to humans, but in my dream they actually listened to you. You are very young, but maybe your heart knows something about these boats that we don't." Then one day it happened. The boats came for her. Many men on many boats rounded up all three pods into the waters of Penn Cove. Toki could not believe what was happening as she felt the net lift her body out of the water, saw the desperate face of her mother calling out her name. As Toki peered over the side of the boat at her mother's weeping face one last time, she heard her mother's voice shout over the din of orca parents and children wailing, "Remember, you are special, Toki. Remember, you have a destiny." The boat took Toki far from home, and to her great surprise, put her on an airplane. A Thunderbird, she thought. It carried her far away from her home and dropped her at an aquarium in Miami, Florida, where the humans put her in a tank to live. They taught her tricks, and sometimes they took her out to do shows, which she enjoyed. Many of the people around Toki talked about how much money they were making from her, the other whale that lived there, and the dolphins that lived there too. They talked about sales and currency and revenue streams. This must be the stream from the legend, Toki thought. She heard from a dolphin that had been moved there from another facility that all the baby whales captured in Penn Cove that day had been put in similar places, at the mouth of revenue streams. One by one, those whales died, and the news always got back to Tokate. It seemed that the more whales that died in aquariums, the more upset people were getting. Many were saying it was wrong for the aquariums to make money off the suffering of Tokate and other orcas. This must be the poisoned water, thought Toki, killing the spirits of these people who are downstream from my dead brothers and sisters. One by one, the captive orcas from the 3 southern resident orca pods faded into the beyond. Pretty soon, Toki was the only one left. She missed her home, and she missed being able to swim in the big ocean, but many of the people there were her friends, and a few of them she loved. Still, her giant body ached as she grew older and older in the small concrete pool that had become her prison. Then, the day came that they didn't take her out and do shows anymore. Toki got lonely. A lot of people around her started talking about taking her home, but living in a small pool for most of her life had made Toki sick and weak. The loneliness only made it worse. Some days were better, some days were worse. But as time went on, Toki was getting sicker. She had been told in a dream that she would get to go home soon. But when she woke from the dream, she couldn't tell if the dream meant that she would fly back to her family in the Salish Sea or if she was going home to the Creator. She eventually got to the point where she was so tired it didn't really matter to her where she went. One day, she woke up with an infection. She had been sick a lot, but this time it felt different. The humans around her were frantic, doing all sorts of tests and talking in worried voices. But Toki wasn't worried. Because she knew that something great was happening for her. That she was going home. Toki looked up into the bright sun and saw a figure approaching her. It was huge and had wings and reminded her of the airplane that had carried her to Florida. But when she peered closer, she could see it was not a machine, it was alive. Wow, she thought to herself joyfully. This is a real Thunderbird. She smiled bigger than she had smiled since she had played in the waters of the Salish Sea as a child. The Thunderbird swooped down, and she had an equally big smile on her face as she picked Toki up and carried her into the sky. Toki started laughing. She was remembering all the humans around her talking about how hard it was to move a whale when this Thunderbird could pick her up like she was a butterfly. Look down, Tokate, the Thunderbird told her. What do you see? She could see the tiny cramped aquarium pool fading into the distance and the tops of the trees, the mountains and rivers and oceans. As they climbed higher and higher into the sky, she could see the entire country. Before long, she could see the entire world. Listen, said the Thunderbird as they floated into space. Toki listened. They are talking about you. Many have heard your sweet voice. Your cries and the cries of your people are being heard. She swooped up into the cosmos, carrying Toki as though she were no heavier than a Pacific tree frog. Creator sent me to fetch you, the Thunderbird continued, because we have a very important job for you. Humans were fighting hard to get you out of prison so you would not be lonely and sick, but many of them are lonely and sick. You were in a concrete pool, but the humans' prisons are made out of fear. From up here, it will be easier for you to watch over the ones with good hearts and help them sing the healing songs that will bring harmony back to the land, the oceans, and all of the creatures that live upon this great earth. Do you accept? Toki looked down at the blue orb thoughtfully. In the pool, her world had seemed so small. But now she could see it was huge, and that there were many, many beings suffering upon it. Yes, I accept, Toki said. Lovely, the Thunderbird said, and with that she tossed Tokate far up into space. Tokate leapt for joy like she had swum all the way up from the bottom of the ocean and was breaching, touching the sky with her whole heart. As her body twisted and curled, she heard the Thunderbird whisper something that sounded like lightning and rain and 10,000 stones crashing into the Fraser Canyon. Suddenly, she felt her body transform. It was like rivers of sweet fire running all over her. When she looked down at her body, she could see right through it. It was made out of rainbows and filled with stars that shone as bright as the sun. The Thunderbird chuckled. Well, well, little sister, bright day, pretty colors. Thank you, said Toki. This will make it much easier for me to do my job. Now that I'm made out of light, I can zip in and out of people's dreams and check on the ones with good hearts at night. And that's just what she's doing. So if you have a dream and a beautiful whale made out of rainbows and light comes to you to see how you're doing, don't worry. She's your friend. Just remember to tell her the Wave Warrior said hi.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Thank you. I had fun writing it and reading it. And it's pretty personal to me.
I cannot wait for little minds to hear that.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that too.
It's just incredible.
Well, the children's voices are the ones that really have the power. I feel like it's my responsibility to uplift those voices as much as I can, while simultaneously going, I am so sorry for what we have done to this planet, and I hope that this can help. It's not compensation for what we're leaving behind, but I hope that this can help you make it right. And give them the tools to, it's always been my vision to give children back their voices, in a world that has robbed them of it as they rely on, texting and tweeting and Instagramming and whatever instead of really communicating with each other. That's always been, part of the vision. But the other part of the vision has always been to teach children then, why is it important to have a voice? What do you need it for? And it's like, here you go, kids. Now you have a voice. These are the things that are beautiful and worth saving. These are the things that are worth standing up and saying something for. And these orcas, they don't have a voice of their own, but my voice can help them, and your voices can help them. And all it takes is for you to say yes, to have the courage to say yes, and to tell other people, hey, let's look at the fish we're eating and maybe make more sustainable choices. Or, here I've heard about this thing, the Wave Warriors Project, and I know you really care about orcas, so they're banding together to help them, and maybe you want to join. It doesn't take much, if we get enough of those voices together, then we'll be heard.
What a beautiful way to wrap this up. So, folks, you know what to do. You want to support these efforts and be a part of some magical storytelling along the way, then visit adoptorca.org.
Yeah, and I do think that's what makes us different than other projects. You know, with most adopt an orca, adopt a panda, or whatever, you just give them money, and then you get a photograph and a little certificate that says you symbolically adopted a panda or whatever. But with the Wave Warriors, you get fictionalized stories that help you connect with each individual orca as a being with its own personality and its own family and feelings and needs. You get this fun piece of art, this anthropomorphized cartoon whales that I've created around the names of the different orcas to make them interesting and easy to engage with. And we have other perks as well that you get for just being a part of the Wave Warriors. So it's not just like give us your money and here's a certificate. We actually have things that we are going to share with you to help you feel connected to these very orcas that you are so courageously supporting. And that's what makes us different.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. Well, thank you, AC. It's been
You're
so great.
welcome. Thank you, Rachel Wilkins.
Yes, and thank you everybody who is watching this live or who is catching the replay. And please say hello in the comments section. We'd love to get to know you more and hear why you're passionate about these amazing creatures as well. Thanks, everyone.
Love to hear that. Thank you, everybody.